Hello, everybody. I hope we start getting some more viewers in right now. So, without further ado, I am going to start introducing all of my guests here right now. So, let me unmute everyone here. All right, there we go. And I'm still figuring. There we go. Okay, I didn't know which one I would click if I get everybody. But hello, how's everybody doing tonight?
Hello.
Doing all right.
All righty. Of course. But for those who don't know by chance, I am Nathan Marchand.
You are?
And this is But I Digress. I revived my old YouTube show from back before I became a podcaster and was trying to be a YouTuber. And now with the advent of live streaming, suddenly video production is a heck of a lot easier. Although...
Yay.
This old show is not necessarily on a regular schedule like I tried to back in the day. But welcome to But I Digress episode 45. And it's actually a very special occasion here because the reason I have this roundtable of guests is because we all worked on something special together. And I wanted to have a fun roundtable discussion. Yep, there it is. Thank you, Darren. I have my own copy here as well, and there's Chris with his, and
here's mine.
Oh.
Yep.
Hey.
Okay. Is somebody still muted?
No.
I keep seeing Mike muted, and I don't know what's going on.
Nope. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear everybody. But anyway, and by the way, Bex, I definitely owe you an author copy. I need to send you an author copy. It's sitting in the box, waiting to be sent, and I haven't sent it because I'm a terrible person. But
I'm still waiting on mine.
Yeah. Says the guy who bought it.
It's probably easier now than it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Anyway, I figured while we're waiting for people to join us in the chat, we would go around. It's unfortunately we are missing one of us. My friend Nick Hayden was unable to join us tonight. Nick has been just started as a full-time teacher this fall, and he's a little bit exhausted. I think he needed to introvert very hard tonight. So we love you, Nick, and I wish you could have been here.
Relate.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll go around the screen here. So I will start by going to on my screen. It would be to my right. So we'll go to Eric next. So tell us, who are you? Who are you?
I am Eric. And I run a little thing called Nerd Chapel, where I slowly and very, very slowly integrate people into amazingness, assimilate people. Yes.
Okay, this sounds weirdly cultish. I don't know if I want to be associated with your chapel anymore.
Were you going for the Borg, sir? I heard a little bit of the Borg in there.
Yes.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So basically, I try to bridge the gap between the church and nerd culture. So, the little Blue Lantern love, because Blue Lanterns are amazing. Hope is a wonderful thing, and I try to spread hope simply by being a gentle Christian presence in nerd culture without all the weirdness of standing on a box and yelling at people. So,
because Lord knows we see a lot of that at conventions, although I've never been to a show where that happened.
I've seen it at a couple of shows.
Yeah. I've heard some horror stories from a couple of our mutual friend, Hector, from Faith and Fandom.
Yeah.
All right. So, continuing down the line as it's arranged on my screen, Bex.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi, Bex.
Hi. So, let's see. I am a anime super fan, and I run a podcast called Redeemed Otaku. We're a little bit on a hiatus right now, but we'll be relaunching very soon.
The second coming of Redeemed Otaku. I expect trumpets.
I definitely have a desire and a passion for the anime fans. And I've seen Eric in action at his conventions that he attends, and it has inspired me. So definitely looking to jump back into the convention scene next year, and follow Eric's
Awesome.
example to bridge that gap and make connections with people, and in hope to share the gospel with them. So yeah.
Did RamenCon happen this year?
It did. RamenCon did happen, but it was too close to a big life event for us that we were unable to attend this year.
Okay. I was
So,
wondering
yeah.
because I have to confess there have been moments where I thought, you know what, I should go up to RamenCon and see Bex and Tim. But
Yeah,
then you
next
decided
year.
to come see me. So
Yep, exactly. Next
All
year,
right, so-
baby.
we need
Bex,
to
I
take
also
we
gotta
need to we
compliment
need to
your Sailor Moon T-shirt and the T-Rex
Oh,
in the
thank you.
background.
I thank you. Yeah.
her two favorite things. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. We need to convention together.
Oh my
at some
gosh,
point.
For absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Now, moving down the line, Chris.
Hey. Hi. So my name is Chris. I'm the host of One Cross Radio. I like hats, so that's why I'm rocking one. And we talk about life, politics, and a lot of geeky stuff, and where all that intersects. And I just try to be a nice representation of geeky Christians to a non-Christian audience at times. So also rocking a Bizarro t-shirt because Bizarro is awesome.
By the way, we have someone in the chat right now. Check it out.
Hey.
Chat Manly 405.
Hey, Chat Manly.
The second coming of Redeemed Otaku
Yay.
is imminent.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
Welcome.
go definitely check out my YouTube channel because I've been doing a little bit of light YouTubing here and there with
light
Pokemon
YouTubing,
cards, so, yeah.
light YouTubing. She says, spending 25 minutes unboxing and talking about Pokemon cards. That's light YouTubing.
It's wonderful, is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually, I have to say, I've been watching those videos and they are strangely relaxing. I rather enjoy sitting there and watching you just play around with cards.
They
nice.
seriously
Very
are
good.
delightful. It's just like, hey, I'm excited about this, and you're like, wow, man, this is calming.
Which is why I will say I am now that you are getting back into Pokemon cards, I suddenly feel like I was accidentally genius and may have, I don't know, had some sort of prophetic message from the Holy Spirit, because I'm having you on my podcast, the Monster Island Film Vault, to talk about a Gamera film that would very much be in line with Pokemon. So Chris is smiling because he knows what I'm talking about.
I'm excited about that.
Anyway, Scott, you're next in line.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Scott. I am a pastor, author, husband, father, martial arts enthusiast, comic book nerd.
Yeah, you didn't screw up your trachea.
No,
or
I have
whatever.
no injuries as of this moment.
Good.
There will be no pain tonight. I am slightly disappointed.
Maybe next time. You never know when another injury is just around the corner.
Oh, for those just to explain to our viewers and listeners, that's a little bit of an inside joke because Scott and I were on the Christian Nerds Unite podcast, and you injured yourself doing some martial arts training the day before, and you weren't sure you would be able to talk. I was like, you'll just sound like Bane when you come on. Yeah?
I did. Yeah, I sounded like an 80-year-old smoker. It was pretty bad, but I'm better now. So
yeah. All right, and
Very
finally, we have Darren, who is sitting there being very stoic. The Orange Mailman.
Orange Mailman.
I'm Darren.
You guys are
I'm
a bunch
the
of
Orange
nerds.
Mailman. Thank you.
And you're the token girl, so.
Oh.
I am.
I've been
Sorry,
married
Darren,
for
go ahead.
26 years, and I've been a mailman for 26 years. So I get nerdy about games, about the color orange. Here we go.
Nice.
Oh,
And-
I'm a
and
fun
puns.
guy.
Terrible.
And
Oh, wait.
puns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Eric asked me to. I've been doing stuff with Eric for quite a while, helping out with his Nerd Chapel stuff, and he kind of reached out to me and wanted me to be a part of this, and so I thought about it, and I've done some blogging, but never anything like this. I thought it was a really neat project, so I decided to sign on. So here I am. I've been to Gen Con with Nathan and Eric, and we've hung out together. We hung out at 2013. It was such a blast. I had only met Nathan like once or twice briefly before, but hanging out with them at Gen Con 2013, we really kind of bonded there. It was a lot of fun.
And I can tell you the moment when we truly bonded, and that was when I made a random Homestar Runner reference playing with the hotel room lights. And it just went flipped. And I was like, the system is down. And they're like, you know about Homestar Runner? Yes, I do. We are friends now.
That's great.
All righty then. So, as we've been talking about and showing off a little bit, we're here.
Yeah,
to
what's your
talk
nerdy
about,
stuff?
Yes, to talk about the Fantastic 42. Now, for those who perchance don't know exactly what this is, Eric, you want to start off the story? Because this is actually book 3. I'm going to show off books 1 and 2 here.
So, years ago, I was walking around a Christian bookstore. Dun, dun, dun. And as I looked around in the devotional section, I found a lot of devotionals that were written for fans of sports, hunting, women's groups, and I always like to say women's tea groups. Just, I don't know. I just tend to say that.
You sexist. I'm kidding.
But nothing for our crowd. Nothing that was specifically written for fans of science fiction, superheroes, gaming, etc., etc. So I said, okay, something needs to be done about this. And I felt the pull from the Spirit to do something. And being that I had never written a book before, I said, God, how about I bring Nathan in? God's like, okay, go ahead, bring that Nathan guy in. And
yeah, that's a good idea.
I called Nate and said, hey, I'm doing this. I want you to do it with me.
Yeah, I believe the way I remember the conversation was you called me up and say, hey, you ever notice that there aren't any devotional books for our subculture? Yeah. You want to write one? Sure.
Yeah. And so we did 2 before this where Nate and I each did half the book each. And
which that's a part of the story we need to explain. The reason why it's titled 42 and why there are 42 entries. Yes. We do need to explain that.
So
before we start talking about this project.
Right. So we were in a couple of Christian nerd Facebook groups at the time and put in there, hey, we're working on a devotional for nerds and geeks. What are your thoughts? What do you want to hear about? Et cetera, et cetera. And someone said, well, you should name it 42 after Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And
and specifically that it should be 42 entries long, because we were toying with doing 30 days or 40 days. 30 days because it's a solid month, and 40 days because it's a significant number in the Bible. And that's usually because I looked at the market, because I'm familiar with with this particular market, because I'm the writer out of the two of us. Because you and I are college buddies. You were I was a writing major. You were, I always forget your majors. Biblical studies.
So I was a double major of Christian ministries with a focus in Christian education and biblical studies.
That's what it was. But we bonded over the nerdy stuff. And I said that we need to go one of those two routes. And then someone said, why don't you make it 42 days in reference to Hitchhiker's Guide? And it said, that is brilliant. And then 3 days later, you agreed with me. So
well, that's okay. But so we wrote our first book.
I just want to interject. I just want to interject real quick that I'm disappointed in you, Nathan, that this is your 45th episode and that you didn't plan for this to be your 42nd episode. I just want to say that.
Ooh.
That was a missed
Yeah.
opportunity right there.
Yeah.
Actually episode 42 was part of my Gen Con coverage, so I guess I don't have an excuse at that point.
That's right.
He
That's
does
right.
That is a
you
missed
can just shame
opportunity.
him all you want for that.
Yeah.
And
Shame!
so
Dishonor on you! Dishonor on your cow!
Yep.
yes, so our first two books were very curriculum driven. The first book we said, okay, let's just do something introductory. Let's ask, who is this Jesus guy? What does
That's
it
what
mean
this
for me
one is.
individually?
Yeah, that would be this one.
And what does it mean for us as a group? So that's what we did with the first book. We just used illustrations from Star Wars. Superman had 2 entries right back to back.
And that was intentional.
Intentional, yeah. I also had the show Haven from the Sci-Fi Channel that was based on some Stephen King works had an entry in there. Just a variety of different nerd things, but we didn't get everything in there.
Bunko!
So
All right.
and that went up really well. Our first convention at it, we donated 10 copies to the Christian Gamers Guild for their booth, and we had an additional 20 at Nate's table. The copies at the Christian Gamers Guild booth sold out by the middle of the second day, and it was a 4-day con.
Wow.
And
Well,
so
by sold out,
That's
we mean I
awesome.
think they just gave them away. Wasn't that basically?
they were
that's
doing
still-
$8
Yeah.
donations.
Yeah.
Oh, they were
Yeah,
doing
they were
donations.
$8 donations to the group for it.
Okay.
So
So then they
that
started
happened-
telling everybody to go to my table.
yeah, I put out my copy of our book as the booth copy at the CGG, and people saw it, said, "This looks cool," and I said, "Well, go to Nate's table," because I was volunteering at the booth, which means I was running between both Nate's table and that booth that year, and trying to get in some games as well. So I did that, and people were coming all the way across a huge vendor hall. Gen Con's vendor hall is ginormous. It is just ridiculously huge.
Yeah,
And-
the vendor hall alone in Gen Con, because that's at the Indiana Convention Center in Indianapolis. I have seen whole conventions take up the same space as
Right.
just the vendor hall of Gen
Yep.
Con. It's that insane.
So people are coming in at that time. One of the interesting aspects was that was the last year where they had one combined Kent Shear for all of the artists and authors.
Mm-hmm.
And so people came halfway across this ginormous vendor hall to find one table in the middle of like 30 or 40 author tables, and then go get in a line with a cashier for 20, 30 minutes to pay for the book, then bring back a slip showing us they had paid for it in order to buy the book.
Wow.
And we came home with one copy.
I think it was more like 2 or 3. I didn't have many left.
You gave one copy to Marina Sirtis because her character from TNG
Nice.
was in the book.
Because Deanna Troy is a subject.
So you gave
Yeah.
one copy to her, and then after that we had one copy left over from that.
Okay, that's what I didn't quite
Yeah.
remember all the numbers. But
So-
yeah. So it was a magical time. That
Yeah.
that was a
It was
magical
a
Gen Con.
great weekend.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that book continued. There are some cons you don't sell well, some cons you do great. It always varies.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um,
And then a couple years ago, we decided to do a second book. So we'll
Yep.
do a quick primer on this
Yep.
one.
So the
One of the things I will say we wanted to do is some of the feedback we got from readers for this one was that we had some very glaring omissions. Like we did from
Yes.
the first book, like we didn't have anything on Firefly. We had hardly anything on video games, and much to Bex's chagrin, no anime. Weirdly enough,
Yep.
hence why we're like video games and anime girl on cover.
Yep.
We're
Well, and
fixing
we
the
also-
problem.
Yes, and I also purposely included a couple of Disney connections in the second book as well, because we didn't have any Disney in the first book. So the second book, I was praying and thinking about it, I said, let's focus on the idea of newness. Let's ask the question, how does God do new things, and how can we cooperate
Mhm.
with that?
Mhm. And that's also
and-
when we discovered that calling it 42 is puntastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the first book is just 42 discovering faith through fandom. This one is the new 42, which is in reference to the new 52, which was a DC Comics branding about 10 years ago. A bit of an infamous one too, and it's called God Terraforms All Things. So, in
Terraforming
reference
the
to
view.
a line from Revelation.
It
Yep.
doesn't seem right that was 10 years ago,
That the new
Yeah.
52?
right?
Yeah.
I know.
Wasn't that
Anyway,
when
moving
people
on.
were saying?
I mean,
And
the
yes,
last 2 years have felt like 10 years. So that feels
Yeah.
even longer.
Let's not get into that. I
Let's not
have
get- yeah.
opinions about comics. Anyway.
So, and yes, Chip Manley, making all nerds and geeks happy is difficult. This is very difficult because everyone likes different
Okay,
things.
here,
Right.
here.
Yep.
I'll put it
There
up
we
so
go.
everybody else can read it. Yeah, Chet man.
So,
Yeah, making all nerds and geeks happy is difficult. Yeah.
so
And just if I may
I don't know.
quote,
The Star Wars fandom always seems happy with everything that's going on.
oh yeah, totally.
Right.
I'm just gonna say I will now quote God from Bruce Almighty. Once you figure out the answer to that, let me know. So
yeah. So that was our focus, and I also wanted to make sure that we encourage biblical literacy with the second book. A lot of people in the church today have this idea that everyone knows about
oh
all
no,
these.
did we lose Bex? Oh, there's Bex.
There she
I
is.
thought we
Oh.
lost her. She went
There's
Can you hear me
idea-
now?
Yes.
No,
yes.
Ken, yeah.
I can't
Yes,
hear you.
You can't hear us? Oh no. Technical difficulties.
We
Why
can
did
hear
you
you.
bring the
Nate, what
technical
button did you
difficulties,
push?
Chris?
Hello, can you hear me?
I
Can you hear
don't
me?
know, man.
We can hear you.
We can hear
I
you.
can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I can't hear you.
Please stand by.
I'm gonna leave and come back in.
Okay. So we lost Bex for a hot second.
Yep.
Anyway,
So
continue. Finish the story, and hopefully she'll be able to
Yes.
jump back in. I'll keep
So-
monitoring.
so one of our things that we wanted to do was to make sure that we gave chances for people to learn these stories that some Christians assume everybody knows, and the reality is not everyone knows all these stories from the Old Testament and New Testament anymore. So we wanted to encourage people to learn those stories and to experience what God has to teach in those stories. So that was what brought together our second book, and that one has done pretty well as well. Our first convention with that was in Muskegon, Michigan at MuskyCon. And between both titles, we sold 14 books in one day. And that at a small one-day convention is really good. A lot of the small one-day shows I go to, I'll only sell 1 or 2 books. And so it really was a fun experience. And you know, Muskegon is my hometown territory along with Darren's hometown territory. So that may have helped a bit as well. But yeah, so we just kept saying, okay, we need to keep going. We've still got some other ideas for other things to do. And then, you know, when it came time to do a new one, I noticed, or we realized Nate was rather busy. He had this tiny thing called a master's degree he was working on. Not a
Yeah.
big thing, just a master's degree.
I graduated now.
Yes, graduated. And I felt that it was a good time for us to do something with less of a curriculum focus and to do more of just a general character study focus. And that made it easier for us to include other people.
Mm-hmm.
So Darren was one of the first people I thought of because he had helped me out with some Nerd Chapel Sunday morning services at conventions at Grand Con specifically. Grand Con Gaming Convention, great gaming convention. So come next September to Grand Con. You know, Scott was another person. I'd worked with him at a couple of cons, read his work, knew that he'd be a great person to include in this. We wanted to get Bex in because we knew she'd have a handle on a lot of stuff that Nate and I are not very connected with.
Yeah, that was actually another one of the reasons that we wanted to do the grand experiment of bringing more people onto this, because we wanted to expand out and include things that you and I hadn't talked about. And, you know, contrary to how I might sometimes project myself, apparently, especially at Gen Con, I guess, I don't know everything. I'm not kidding you.
You don't
I'm not
say.
kidding you. I'm not kidding you. I had people I had a couple of my Gen Con friends walk up to me and start talking to me about Game of Thrones or Walking Dead, like I knew what they were talking about, and I had to stop them and say, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
So we wanted to be able to broaden the book's horizons a little bit, hence why we invited more people on. And even if it was something that you and I are familiar with, Eric, they may know some things about it that you and I don't necessarily know, like bringing on Scott. And almost all of his entries are about comic book superheroes, but he talked about things that you and I might have not necessarily have thought of. And so that was the other thing. Or Chris, you brought in some superhero things that I've read plenty of comics, but you've read some that I haven't, and you have a vested interest in some characters that Eric and I don't. So which we'll get into in a little bit here. So that was part of the reason that we branched out. Squirrel Girl.
Yes.
And so Squirrel Girl is a real character, people.
Yes.
And she's awesome.
I'm not making that up. She is a real character.
Yeah, and so we brought one. We did have one thing we wanted to try. We wanted to make sure everyone did a prayer entry. And we also wanted to connect with tabletop gaming fans through the game Unmatched, and just make sure some characters from Unmatched got in.
Yeah, which at the time the roster had 7 characters. I think it's more than doubled since we started on the book. It's a little insane, but it's for those who don't know, Unmatched is an amazing game, and it's kind of me and Eric's new tabletop obsession. So. They have a Marvel set coming out, and Deadpool just got added.
They have 3 Marvel sets coming out, and Deadpool is already out.
Yeah, Deadpool's already out, and apparently he breaks the game by design.
Of
course.
Anyway, so that's why
Deadpool's there.
Well, and Deadpool's set is fun because he in the story he got frustrated that all these other Marvel characters got into it and he didn't. So he grabbed other cards from other characters and drew over them to make his cards for his set.
Nice.
It's brilliant.
So,
but anyway,
he's even got like Cyclops' credit card is one of the ones that he wrote on to make one of his cards. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
Nice.
but anyway, so that's why we went around and we started inviting people that we were connected with. I was friends with with Nick Hayden, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us. He and I knew each other from school, and he and I both had experience writing devotionals before, because that was a common assignment that we got in our writing classes back when we were in school. So we were very well versed in it. And I knew Nick's a brilliant writer, and he makes a lot of very cool connections with what he does. And he's into some things that I've been exposed to them, but he knows way more about them than I do, like the Wheel of Time and Babylon 5 and things like that. And so he's very insightful. I wish he could have been here tonight, and
he's very intelligent.
Yes. This is the guy who took the Greek class for 4 semesters for his foreign language requirement to graduate.
For fun.
He took it for fun, and to this day has the highest grade in the history of the school.
Dang.
Wow.
He missed 3 points over 4 semester. 3 points.
Wow.
So
I think the biggest thing of him missing here, aside from the wonderful perspective he would bring, is we've missed out on the opportunity to have a Seventh Heaven theme sing-along. It would have just been perfect.
Yeah, that would have been great. But anyway, so now that we've gotten all of the background information out, we're done flashbacking. We're moving on to the present now. So I've got a handful of questions here that I wrote down. So we've done introductions, like I said. So first thing I want to ask everybody is, how did you go about writing your particular entries? So, well, I guess we'll do it true roundtable style. We'll go around. So I guess we'll start with you, Eric.
So I look for characters that had something unique to share, and also for characters from things that maybe others wouldn't think of. So I did 2 of my characters come from old 1950s sci-fi. And one of them is connected with one of these you see here, and two of them come from there. I had when some things changed up, and I ended up needing to write more than 6. I had some sudden sudden thoughts from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because I was watching some episodes of that, partly because there's a Buffy set for Unmatched, and had some thoughts, and so I pulled that one together. And like some of the characters are just characters that I found inspiring. So Saint Walker, the Blue Lantern, like the Blue Lantern that has he's the original Blue Lantern, and he also is one of very few that are actually named. They don't really name very many of the Blue Lanterns because they haven't shown them very much. But his whole journey of hope in the middle of really, really terrible circumstances was very inspiring and very insightful about hope. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm doing one on him. And I always include Stargate because I'm a huge Stargate buff. So I did get a one-off character from a Stargate episode. And
Eric, I think we are at the point where if there's a 42 book that doesn't have at least one entry on Stargate, we've not done our job. It's basically required at this point.
Yep.
Now, what you should really do to shake things up is for the next one, write one based on the movie.
It's possible.
Yeah, I'm talking the original movie was it Kurt Russell? Yeah,
Kurt Russell,
James Spader.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I mean.
And Ultron was in that one as well.
James Spader. Yeah.
Yep,
All right, so
Robert California himself.
Yeah. So moving around since everything got shuffled because Bex had to drop in and out. Darren, tell us about writing yours.
Well, I drew from things that I was already knowledgeable about, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I soaked that story up and just saw a lot of Christian parallels in it. So when the opportunity came up, I had already been convicted by a lot of things in the story of Jekyll and Hyde. So writing that was pretty natural. But the one that was fun was Darkwing Duck. I just basically put on episodes of Darkwing Duck, and I just wrote down the things that he was saying because he's like Flash Gordon. He narrates his own thing. This dynamic do-gooder does dot, 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 dot. And, this nocturnal nemesis of ne'er-do-wells. And I'm like, hey, this is good stuff. I'm just going to put this right in the devotional. And, okay, I got to do more research here. All right, it's another episode of Darkwing Duck. I'm researching. That one was a really fun one to write. But all the rest of them I pretty much drew from things that I was already fairly knowledgeable about, like Lord of the Rings. I'm fairly knowledgeable about that, so I just drew from. Just went and okay, let's look at Aragorn here and how he's the king of the dead, and look at Jesus and how he's the Lord of the dead, and just do some parallels. So that was my method.
And our host disappeared.
He's gone.
Keep talking, Darren. I just felt like showing
actually,
this off since you're talking about Lord of the Rings.
You want to
there you
call
go.
me out right now, Nathan?
What?
You want me to call you out right now?
Sure.
Okay. So I originally submitted 5 entries. I emailed Eric 5 ideas, and I said, "This is what I got." He says, "Well, we're asking for 6." And I said, "Well, I don't have a 6th idea. I'll try and come up with something." And then he says, "We're asking for at least one of them to be a prayer devotional, have a prayer focus." And I thought, oh no, I'm not good at prayer. I feel like I struggle with it. I love to study the Bible, but when it comes to prayer, I feel like it feels like it's a chore sometimes. I thought, how can I write a devotional on prayer? And then I got to thinking about Wesley, and at the very end in the book, Wesley's prayer
The
to
Princess
the Lord
Bride
of Permanent
specifically.
The Princess Bride, yes.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I was picturing
at the very
Fletcher.
end, he offers up this prayer, to the Lord of permanent affection as he's about to crumple over and die, and the Lord answers his prayer. And I thought, yeah, I think I could make something work on that. And so I emailed him that idea, and Eric said, okay, all your ideas are accepted. And then as I was writing it, I thought, wait a second, I'm going to have to point out the difference between the book and the movie, because this is in the book and most people are familiar with the movie, The Princess Bride. And so I'm going to have to talk about the difference. And oh yeah, Nathan and I had a conversation about the difference between the book and the movie at Gen Con.
Yeah, well,
Nathan says,
I was going to say, which Gen Con was that?
Gen Con
There's a
2019.
book?
What?
And Nathan
I'm
is
not
saying,
kidding. I didn't know there was a book.
Wait, hold on. Pause, Darren. Chris, you have somehow gone your entire life and didn't realize that The Princess Bride is based on a novel?
I had no clue, none whatsoever. Any single reference ever made about it to me, around me, has strictly been about the movie.
Okay. Well, here, let me explain something to you. What's fascinating about The Princess Bride as both a movie and a novel is the author of the novel also wrote the screenplay for the movie because he was a screenwriter before he was a novelist. He also wrote things like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. What?
Did they get him back for a PG-13 version of Deadpool 2 or just the kid?
I think it was just the kid. But
sorry.
We got a comment here. The best lines in the movie are taken word for word from the book, which is true. Anyway, Darren, you may continue. I needed to fill the void in Chris's life with some facts. So
gaping void.
Yeah. So I went back to the conversation that Nathan and I had and basically started off my devotional. Nathan and I are having a disagreement and I need your help. So basically, well, it's not that Nathan thinks that the movie is better. He thinks that the movie and the book are equals. And I say the book is better.
Okay. Well, basically the conversation was we got onto the subject of the whole the book is always better debate. And I actually said that I have a short list of exceptions to that. And I mentioned what I thought were in cases where I thought the movie was superior. And then I said, but I also have a couple that break even. And one of them for me is The Princess Bride, because I read the novel and the novel is phenomenal. But there are things I like better in the movie than I do the novel. But then there are things in the novel I like better than the movie. So I couldn't pick.
So I like the book better, and that's how I started off, was by calling out Nathan and saying, hey, Nathan is wrong. Help me out.
And what's funny, you took it a step further, Darren, because what's funny is we have at the end of each entry, we call them quests of the day. So things to do or application based off of what you just read, and you flat out saying, I still don't know if you're serious or not. You put in one of them that everyone needs to call me and tell me I'm wrong. You basically said, contact Nate Marchand and tell him he's wrong.
That is not what I said. I will read this right now. Write Nathan a letter and tell him the truth. I put, buy the book, read it for yourself, write Nathan a letter, and tell him the truth. That's what I put.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
All right. So we'll move on to the next one. And because of all the shuffling, you're next, Bex. Bex.
All right.
Bex. Anyway.
Well, I only wrote 2 entries due to some life events. I could only submit the 2. So
it was 2020, you know. It was.
Yeah, our 2020 started in 2019, so it's been a couple of years. Yeah, but so I wrote the Sailor Moon and Jurassic Park entries, and I've been a huge fan of both ever since I was introduced to them, saw them on the big screen. Sailor Moon was very early on. And I did a devotional for Geek Devotions on their YouTube channel back a few years ago. And it was around Sailor Moon and the theme of identity. And that is a huge topic. And I saw big parallels in the Sailor Moon, just the whole storyline of Sailor Moon and how she has so many different aspects of her identity and she struggles with it kind of as she goes along. But in the anime fandom specifically, there is just a big need for people to know and get answers for their struggles with their own personal identity. So I felt that was a good entry point to that topic, especially for Christians in this day and age, because we are bombarded with all these ideas of who we are and who we identify with, that I think we need to keep in mind that as Christians, we need to know that our identity is found in Christ, and we need to be reminded of that over and over again, because it is really, truly the most important thing. But yeah, so the Sailor Moon and then the Jurassic Park one, that one was a tough one for me because there isn't really like any sort of Christ theme or Christ figure in that one. So I kind of had to really focus in on Dr. Grant because he's a character in the Unmatched game, and kind of look at. Oh, he will be. Okay, so isn't it the Velociraptors or?
Yeah, the Velociraptors and the security guy from the first movie.
Ah, okay.
Well, the guy who's famous for saying "clever girl," and those are
Clever
his last
girl.
words.
Yeah.
Good old Muldoon.
Muldoon,
Him and his
yep.
terrifically short shorts.
Well, yeah, so I kind of honed in on Dr. Grant because he's kind of this old crotchety archaeologist who refuses to, play with the kids or encourage the kids in their love for dinosaurs. And it just reminded me kind of myself because I've been a Christian for many, many years. And in our ladies' study back last year, we had an older lady who was a new Christian, new convert. And she converted from Judaism. So all of her knowledge came from the Old Testament. So when we were talking about when we were studying the book of Philippians, she would ask these questions that were kind of Sunday school questions that anybody who spent any time in Sunday school should know the answer to this. And I had to like check myself a little bit, so I kind of saw myself in Dr. Grant with just how we sometimes disregard the younger Christians in their new walk with Jesus. So that's kind of how I got the inspiration for that, was just kind of my own personal experience and kind of having to examine myself in that instance. And then, of course, it was fun writing about all the dinosaurs and recreating those scenes because I love that movie.
Because it's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And it is so rewatchable. So.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Fantastic, you're saying?
Fantastic. You got it. You got it.
Quick question for you guys, because we're all Christians here. Did any of you guys ever grow up with McGee and Me?
McGee and Me.
I saw a couple episodes.
I did.
Yeah, it was the Focus on the Family thing with the kid who talked to the cartoon in Bible lessons. The kid that Dr. Grant scares with the raptor claw is a kid from McGee and Me who got bullied by the bully Derek and got jelly donuts squeezed on his head. So
wow,
there you go.
Small world.
It is.
That's funny.
Leave it up to nerds
there
to
you
make
go.
connections like that.
Now we just need to get him connected to Kevin Bacon. By the way, Darren, you have been validated.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh, and look, my brother in the room next door is watching.
Nice.
Nice.
Hi, Jared.
Hey,
That's
Jared.
awesome.
What's up, Jared?
Oh, he's also talking about McGee and me.
Yes.
Yeah, Nate, did you
Dude
get to meet
gets
the
it.
creator when he was teaching at Taylor?
I did.
Yeah, so
a
I
couple
got to
of
have
times.
lunch with him one
I
day.
unfortunately didn't take his class, but I did meet him a couple of times.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he's a
did
funny dude.
message at
Anyway,
chapel one day. But
anyway, Mr. Chris McGee and me, not Mac and me, McGee and me.
Yeah.
Mac
Cook.
and me. Oh no.
Wait,
Yes,
what?
I know.
What's Mac
Yeah.
and me?
Oh,
You
you
don't
need to
want
go
to
watch
know
Mac and Me.
unless you
No.
watch MST3K. That's all
no,
I'm saying.
you need to go watch Mac and Me for sure. I
No.
highly recommend.
Vex
No.
has not steered me wrong with her recommendations, so
How
I'll roll
badly
with
do
that.
you want to? How badly do you want to see the worst version of ET
It's great.
ever?
It's
I mean,
amazing.
The worst version of stuff can be fun.
Anyway.
Have you guys ever seen Backstroke to the West?
I
The
don't
shiny.
want
The
Okay, there
the
are
dub-
so many terrible jokes there, Chris. Let's stay focused. Tell us about writing your devotional entries.
Man.
Well, you know me, sir. I'm long-winded and I get off track real easy. So writing my devotional entries was interesting. Sorry about the squeak. That's my adorable dog, Luna. She's
Okay,
demanding
now my
play.
brother is talking about Mac and Me. Watch that movie with the Japanese ending, I dare you.
I'm in. Yeah,
Yes.
so writing my entries was an interesting thing because I like writing.
Hi,
and
Luna.
Writing about. Yes, hi, Luna.
I hear the squeaky toy.
Writing was a bit of a challenge because I'm like, okay, I know a lot of Star Wars characters or comic book characters, but all right, who can I write about? And then who can I write about that will meet the word count and isn't just repeating something we've already seen or heard or that someone's written better than I can? And then also, like, what would be a unique thing to say with some of these characters? So with Jessica Cruz, the Green Lantern, that one hit me in a big bad way because I've been struggling with anxiety disorder for the past couple of years. And I used to work in social ministry with a number of youth who struggled with it. And then when I showed them that, it blew their mind because they hadn't seen that depicted so realistically and generously. And for me, it just hit like, man, it just bam. So doing that, and Moon Knight and Nathan and I had done a podcast episode on my show about Beast Wars, where we talked about Dinobot for the majority of the episode because he's just so gangster.
I love Dinobot.
And there's just so many
love
lessons.
that Shakespeare quoting warrior robot raptor.
There's just so many good lessons that can be learned, and we don't always have to go with the most obvious choices. And sometimes the lesser knowns you can get a lot of good out of. So I hope I answered your question.
You basically did, although I was
Okay.
waiting for some little story about how I put you through the grinder when we were in the editing process.
Oh yeah, no, well, you didn't ask that. But yeah,
I will confess, I did feel a tiny bit bad, but I tried to couch it with you by saying it's like you are getting high caliber, instruction right now. I would normally charge a buttload of money for this, and you're getting it for free. So,
and I'll say the only other writing experience with the devotional that I've had was Faith and Fandom, and with that, it's more of an essay format. Like, hey, write down what you think, and you do it in like I don't know, 10 to 15,000 words, and then we go from there. Where is it? 1,000 to 1,500 words.
Yeah, I was
Anyway.
gonna say that's a lot of.
that's
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah, no, I was most definitely wrong. So changing the structure.
Okay, Scotty, you like multiplying your numbers by a factor of 10 there? I gotta maintain my reputation as a miracle worker.
So like changing the tone from the only way I've ever written, that was a challenge and a good one. And you were so patient with me, man. I really appreciated it.
if you've seen some of the things that I have graded as an English teacher, you would understand.
I was like, is this a burn?
No, you were fine compared to some of the other things I've seen. Very, very fine. Anyway, now we come to Scott. Tell us about writing your entries. Now, you were actually one of the more experienced writers that we worked with because you've done a lot of stuff like this in the past.
Yeah, and so actually, I was really excited when Eric first reached out to me about the project because, as at least you and Eric know, I've written 2 other books before this in a series called Holy Heroes, and in those books, I focus on superheroes and draw spiritual lessons. Yeah, thanks, Eric. That's the first one in the series, and then the second one is the Holy Heroes devotional. And I just draw spiritual lessons, biblical lessons out of the stories of these superheroes because I've been a huge superhero nerd my entire life. And, you know, when I was probably around 30, it kind of dawned on me that, you know, maybe I could, you know, take this geeky passion that I have and use it somehow to glorify God and to share Jesus with other people. And so that's what I did. And I'm also involved in a ministry called Costumers for Christ, where we actually cosplay as superheroes at Comic Cons, and we give out comic books about Jesus that just tell the story of Jesus. And so we get to, you know, mix and mingle with nerds of all sorts at comic conventions all the time. And we have a blast doing it. But
I actually have one of your art pieces that I got from the one con that we hung out at Tricon. It's up on the wall right now. It's Jesus and Superman.
Jesus, that's my favorite one, actually. Yeah, I love the Jesus and Superman one. And behind me, you can see the poster that has Superman, Hulk, Batman, Spider-Man, and Jesus together. That's actually kind of pulled from the last page of the comic book about Jesus.
Well, what came first, that or the meme that has Jesus hanging out with all of them and he all those superheroes, and he says, and that's how I save the world?
The meme came first, but only by a little bit. I stole it from the meme the first time I saw it, like 10 years ago or 8 years ago, something like that.
I actually have a t-shirt. So my sister got me a t-shirt of that meme, and it actually has a couple extra heroes that were not in the original meme. So that was really cool.
So anyway, as you know, I've got a little experience writing about that. And so when Eric reached out to me, I was excited for multiple reasons. One, because, you know, I'm already familiar with
Scott, you'll appreciate this from my brother.
Holy Heroes, Batman. Exactly. That's how I hear it every time I say the title. I hear Robin saying it. Holy Heroes. You know, that's exactly how you were supposed to hear it. So thank you. I'm glad it worked.
I can't believe I can't believe I never realized that.
Oh, man.
I need to turn in my nerd card right now. Anyway.
Anyway, so when Eric reached out to me about it, I was really excited because I was familiar, you know, I'd already met Eric and I met you at a convention, and I met Eric mostly, we chatted online. We actually have worked together at one convention in Chicago. But I'm familiar with Nerd Chapel, and we have very similar ministries. And so I was excited to be able to partner with you guys, but also I had some ideas left from my previous book, the Holy Heroes devotional, that didn't make it into the book, but I'm still thinking, well, maybe I can do something with that sometime. And so when Eric said, hey, we're putting together a devotional, we want you to contribute, I'm like, oh, I've already got a few ideas because they were already in there. The challenging ones were, well, Eric wouldn't let me do all superheroes. So I had to do something.
We've had a lot of superhero entries in previous books. That's why.
Yes. And so he encouraged me to choose one of the unmatched characters. I ended up doing King Arthur, which actually required research on my part, which is a little bit different than some of the other characters I've
Although I will say, because I remember Eric and I were talking about that, and we actually looked it up, and we're like, there's comic book versions of Arthur in the DC and Marvel universes. He could try that, pull from that or something like that. The Arthur story is very fitting for a comic book. So,
and it gets used in a lot of different. The first thing that came to mind, I don't know if any of you are going to remember this, but there was a cartoon show about King Arthur, and I'm trying to think of the name of it now, but it was set in, it took like a football team from present day and transported them back in time, and that was like the captain of the football team became Arthur, and his Knights of the Round Table, the Knights of Justice, that's what it was. Knights of Justice.
This is a 90s cartoon, isn't it?
90s cartoon,
90s.
yes. It was absolutely horrible, but I loved it.
This has the Mighty Ducks animated show
I went back and I
how have I never heard of this?
You gotta look it up. I'll send you a link. You can watch all 22 episodes on YouTube. So
nice.
Any fans of Kid and King Arthur's Court up in here? Anyone?
I've seen it.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've read a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which is loosely inspired that, but very loosely. But so like I said, we got a lot of superhero stuff from you. Although you branched out a tiny bit, because normally you do specifically like Marvel and DC characters. Like one of my, I'll save that for one of the other questions, but. Like you did an entry on Shazam and Thor, because they once fought each other in the comics and things like that. And then obviously you did King Arthur, and then you branched out a tiny bit into Tokuland, we'll call it. And you talked about the Green Ranger from Power Rangers.
Yes, that is also one of my teenage obsessions, was the Power Rangers. And so I took the opportunity to do that, since it didn't fit with the other books.
Chet Manley remembers the show.
Hey, all right. I'm not the only person on the planet who watched that. But yeah, and I also wrote a chapter on Cara Dune, which was the first time I'd done any Star Wars related stuff.
That was the thing. That was the thing. I did not expect. I actually, for a hot second, I thought while we were working on this, I'm like, given what's happened in the last year, is that going to end up being unintentionally controversial? Thankfully, it wasn't. And even if it was, I would have defended that so hard, because Cara Dune is an amazing character.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I was always timid about writing about Star Wars, because I'm a fan of Star Wars. But not like some fans, like I watch all the movies, but I don't know all the lore and the comic books and the novels and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, ooh,
I'm one of those people.
The character that someone's going to come up with words and say you didn't do it justice or something like that. So, but Cara Dune being original to the show was a little less intimidating.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll come back and talk a little bit about mine. So I kind of went about this very much the same way, like a lot of you. I made a list of characters that I was interested in writing about. I had to whittle it down, and Eric and I were thinking a lot about, what kind of stuff do we want to have represented in this? And we don't want to overdo it on certain things. Let's throw in some stuff that has come out since the second book was published. So that's why we made sure that we had stuff from The Mandalorian. So that's why we were glad that we got a Cara Dune entry from you. I wrote about Mando. So, and I also, you'll appreciate this, Bex, because I knew we needed to get some anime representation, and I wanted to get some kaiju in there. I wrote about a character from the Netflix the Netflix Godzilla anime trilogy, which again, I thought that's going to be a little bit controversial because that's a divisive series. But I went and did it anyway, and I could already tell you there are some people who would have massive disagreements with my take on Haruo Sakaki, who is the main character in that, considering that I drew spiritual applications out of his story. But regardless, I went and did it, and so I'm looking at the list of contents here just to remind myself, because I've slept at least once since we published this. Trying to remember. Oh, I did Chirrut. That was another one. I loved writing about Chirrut in this. He's from Rogue One, which is become one of my favorite Star Wars movies. And one of the things I absolutely adored about Chirrut is his relationship with the Force is much different than any other way we've seen other characters relate to the Force, where they treat it as very impersonal, a very kind of like a Buddhist pantheistic sort of approach to it, whereas Chirrut treated it like it was this living being that he could relate to. And I'm like, why don't they do this more often? This is amazing. This guy is communing with the Force and treating it like it has personality and things like that, and talking about the will of the Force and all of that. And also, he's a blind warrior who can take on a whole troop of stormtroopers and win. I mean, and he's played by Donnie Yen, so it's like all this cool stuff about him. So I wanted to make sure I got something, and that was my prayer entry for that one, because he liked to he had this mantra that he would repeat to himself all the time to keep himself going. And so that I used that as the jumping off point in that. So it was, but let me tell you, the selection process was difficult because I had so many characters that I really wanted to write about, but I'm like, I got to tailor this to the needs of the book, and just gonna have to file some of these away and keep them for later. So I'm never running out of material. Let me tell you. People talk about writer's block. I'm like, I wish I had writer's block. I will have ideas left over when I'm dead. Okay. You will find an entire file stashed away someplace of unused ideas. So, yeah, it's a lot. But anyway,
it'd be like Tupac, but with Christian geeky books.
Basically. Now, related question. I want to go on to the next one, which is, which of your entries is your favorite and why? So, Eric. Well, no. Actually, let's mix it up a little bit. I'm going to start in the opposite corner. Scott, you go first.
Oh man, I was hoping I could have a minute to think about it. I'm going to go with, and there's several that I really liked, but I'm going to go with the Spider-Man entry. It's actually about Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home, because it just struck a chord with me when I saw the movie, and it seems very relevant for our day and age. The approach I took is, you see Mysterio, who comes along acting like a good guy and pretending to be, Peter Parker's best friend and acting like he's there to save the world and that sort of thing. But really, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's deceiving Peter and tricking him into to giving him something that didn't belong to him, wasn't for him. And I just see that a lot in our culture, our society, and even in the church today, that we aren't careful about who we trust. We aren't careful about who we listen to, and we need to be more discerning. We need to learn to recognize the voice of truth and recognize deception when we hear it. And so that seems just very relevant and contemporary to me as an issue that we deal with.
Mm-hmm. All right. And now we'll move up. Darren, you've been too quiet for too long. Tell us what your favorite entry is. Of yours. Your favorite of yours.
Yeah. I will say it is Wesley's prayer to the Lord of Permanent Affection, the one from The Princess Bride. I had a lot of fun writing it, and I had a lot of fun poking at Nathan, and it was the one that was unplanned. I didn't go into it thinking that I would do that, and then all of a sudden here I am comparing the movie to the book and all the things that I love about the book that aren't in the movie. Like, so for Chris's sake, you don't have the Pit of Despair, you have the Zoo of Death.
All right.
With 5 levels where it goes down. The first level's ground level, then 2, 3, 4, 5 is the deepest level with some deadly creature that Humperdinck hoped to discover someday that would be as deadly as him. And guess where Wesley gets moved to? The 5th level of the Zoo of Death. So, but a lot of different things in the book that aren't in there, and I just go through and I say, these are the reasons why the book is better. And then I was like, well, what am I going to relate this to in the Bible? Who is someone that did all of these incredible things and then at the very end had to call on God to save him? And I thought, well, there was Samson. Samson slew 1,000 Philistine warriors with nothing but a bone. And then at the end of it all, he was going to die of thirst. And so he had done all these incredible things, and then he just called out to God to save him because he's going to die of thirst. And so Wesley had done some incredible things in the fire swamp, but now here he is just inches away from death, and he calls out to God to save him. And so then I make the correlation, when is the right time to call on God? I just put in there, like, some of my struggles. Like, sometimes I won't pray for a day, and then I'll feel like, well, is God going to treat me like, you forgot me for a whole day? No, God is not like that. God is so welcoming and has this open invitation to us at all times. And so I just, at the very end, was like, any time is a good time to pray. It does not matter if you haven't prayed for a week or haven't prayed for a day or whatever. Call on God for whatever you need, whenever you need it. And so I really like the devotional, and I hope it speaks to people in the same way that it helped me.
All right, now we're moving over. Eric, it's your turn.
So
I promise I have a logic, but anyway.
Picking a favorite is difficult for any of us. But I think,
I'm sure. It's like asking a parent, like when people ask me, what's your favorite book that you've written? It's like, why don't you ask a parent which child is their favorite? Okay.
The good one.
The good one.
Yes. So
I'm not a parent.
one of my entries, like I said, I did a couple entries based on 1950 science fiction. And one of the movies that I grew up watching was The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original 1951 classic. And now I take a look at Klaatu and his mission. He came to Earth from another planet and wanted to speak to the whole Earth and share this message of a chance to live in peace with other planets, with the whole Earth. And people were blocking him and saying, no, we can't do that. They won't come to our land. We won't go to their land. We were bickering and fighting. And as he put it, he got frustrated with stupidity. And so he wanted to meet common man.
I can relate.
Yeah, he wanted to meet the common man. And he kind of smirked when they locked the room on him, like it was amusing to him. And he goes out amongst the common man just as Jesus came and walked amongst the common man and sat down with people that other people would refuse to sit down with. And just how, he had an offer to be part of this great connection. Jesus said, hey, you have a chance to follow me and to be part of this amazing journey God is taking me on. You can be part of that. And so I just looked at that wonderful. And taking a movie I'd grown up with was fun. My mom was very patient as we watched the movie, and I paused, rewound to make sure I got certain quotes right and certain details right. But it's something that came out of my relationship with my mom was watching those movies, and my mom started me on my nerdiness, and being able to take something that was such a big part of my life for so long and find ways of connecting with Jesus' own mission and with pointing people back to Jesus was just a really fun thing to do.
All right, and now we'll move down on the screen. Now it's your turn, Chris. Which one was your favorite? I think I know, so I want to see if I'm right.
I think I know the one you're talking about. In a weird way, I want to say all of them just because of the.
That's a cop out.
I will be specific about my absolute favorite, but the reason I say all of them is I'll even point at the Robin Hood chapter, which was the biggest struggle one for me to write. And And even
You and
Nathan,
I
as
spent a lot of time workshopping that one.
we did. And by the end of it, I was like, you know what? This is exactly what I wanted to get out. But it took that while and that back and forth to get there. So just the process of that part, I was like, that's just satisfying that it turned out as well as it did and it finally got done.
You actually, it ended up going into some really interesting places. So I can see why you would be a bit proud of that one.
But I will say my absolute favorite is the anxiety lantern chapter with Jessica
Yes,
Cruz.
I was right. Jessica Cruz. I knew it.
Because I think she's a wonderful character. But also for me, it was like it's a bit cathartic to get to write about this stuff, something I've been experiencing and going through, and in a positive way, where so many of our brothers and sisters also struggle with this. And thankfully, in the past like 5 to 10 years, the church has gotten much better at addressing mental health and being supportive for people with it. But still, I'm like, you know what? Here's the chance to just try to normalize it, deal with it for myself, and hopefully come up with a way that can help any other brother or sister going through it. I'm like, you know what? That's the end game for it right there. Like all the other stuff is great. There's wonderful lessons, but that one I was like, these are also very practical steps. Like, yeah.
All right, so now we move over, and Bex, you have 2. So I've got a 50-50 chance to guess right, and I think I already know, but
So when
blow
you
my
first
mind. You have a
asked this-
50-50 chance to blow my mind. So
okay. Well, when you first asked this question, I said one, and then as we as it was going, I went to the other, and then I went back to the other one, and so I've changed my mind like 4 times in the span of 10 minutes.
oh, biting my tongue. There's a joke there, but I'm not going to say it anyway.
Oh, no.
So the Jurassic Park one I mentioned earlier, it really like spoke to me. From a personal experience and a personal heart condition that I had to kind of work through. But I think I'm gonna have to say Sailor Moon because I do love the character, even though I didn't really delve too deeply into her character growth. I think the topic is probably one of my favorites to talk about, and the one that I think is most needed. In a sense, I almost, when I read the devotional, I read it and I'm like, man, I could have gone so much further. And I have this thought that the devotional, that particular one, is unfinished. Like you could just keep going on the topic of identity and who we are in Christ and who Christ is and what that means for us. And so I think I'd have to choose that one as my final answer.
Of course. Of course. I feel like I really wish we could have gotten more from you. I would have loved to have seen what else you would have pulled out of that hat of yours. That just would have been
That magic girl hat.
The magic
girl hat. Yeah.
Yes.
I like to think that this character is me, right? This
the
me right there.
the lady wizard. It's funny. Our cover artist, her name for all 3 books, her name is Ruth. And we have Eric and I have always kind of wondered a little bit if she may have kind of modeled some of these characters after us, because if you look at book 1, our super dude right here looks suspiciously like me from the back, because he looks like he's Superman, but he has blonde hair. And sci-fi guy over here, the Neo looking dude, looks a bit like Eric. Well, Eric
Your
looked a bit
finger's
like
on the wrong
that back
place,
then.
The other
Not
guy,
so much
yeah.
now, but
The other guy.
yeah.
Yeah, I've
So-
grown
Sorry,
some hair
I
out.
thought you said Morpheus, and I was like, what?
No, the Neo-looking
Neo.
guy. No,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, actually, I've kind of wondered if Ruth used herself as the model for Samurai Schoolgirl here, but
Yeah.
I don't know. But Samurai Schoolgirl is just kind of awesome. I love Samurai
Mhm.
Schoolgirl.
She's great. She's
The-
great.
Yeah, actually, and here's something that, I mean, I make no promises about this, but I'm going to throw this out there into the ether. Eric and I were musing a little bit during Gen Con toward the end, and I said, Eric, what do you think about doing, since we have this cover now, this Justice League Avengers style cover here with all of these characters, plus a couple new ones. And I thought, what if we did a fiction spinoff of 42 where we wrote short stories about each one of these characters, and then they have a big Avengers style team up at the end? And he thought
That would
that
be
sounds like a
fun.
great idea.
That'd be
So
fun.
I may actually try getting some people together to try that. I've been toying around with some ideas for like some parameters for all the writers to kind of work within, and I'll just leave it at that for now. So anyway, I was actually poring over the table of contents because I was trying to figure out which one do I genuinely like the most, and there's a lot of them in there that I would love to talk about. That I've mentioned a few that I went to some interesting places with them, and it's hard. It's hard to pick one, and there's been a few that I've talked about already that have been great, but I think I'm going to land on one that I haven't mentioned yet because I think it's one of the more unique ones that I talked about. And that is, I have one on Proto Man from the Mega Man games, but it is not specifically the version from the games.
I'm not surprised you chose Proto Man for your favorite.
Yeah. It's actually the version of Proto Man from a concept album made by a band from California called the Megas. They're basically a Mega Man tribute / cover band. And basically they make albums centered around different Mega Man games, and they kind of expand off of the simple stories that the games have.
Mhm.
And they give Proto Man this whole story arc that he goes through, because the way they interpret Proto Man in this is that because he's Mega Man's brother, basically, because they were created by the same scientist, Dr. Light. And basically, Proto Man was created first. He was a bit of a failed experiment. And then Dr. Light built Mega Man, and then Mega Man went off and basically became a superhero and was saving the world from Dr. Wily and all of that stuff. So the way they present Proto Man is that he's very angry, he's very resentful, and he's just this big ball of burning rage, and he doesn't care for the humans. He does not care for Dr. Light, and he's basically trying to convince Mega Man throughout this whole album that what are you bothering defending these humans for? They're not worth it. And then Mega Man has a little bit of a crisis in this album, and then decides, you know what? No, you're wrong. And then he goes off and saves the world from Dr. Wily and all that stuff. And then the last song in the album, which is also the title of the entry, it's called Melody from the Past, and where Proto Man is looking at what his brother has done, and he comes to terms with himself and what he had been thinking, and learns to forgive, basically, all of these people that he feels like has wronged him, particularly Dr. Light. And I drew parallels with the story of Joseph in Genesis when it came to his brothers, and how Joseph was able to forgive his brothers for everything that they did to him. And it was so interesting. I tried to get a hold of the band to tell them that I was doing this and just say, hey, is it okay if I do this, guys? They never got back to me. I don't know what happened, but I did try. And yeah, so I would say that one because it's not quite the source material you would expect for that particular character.
So obscure.
You're welcome. You should check out the albums. They are amazing. These are nerds and great musicians.
Nice.
All right. So got a few more questions that should round out our conversation. Well, no, actually, I want to do this one because I mean, we've already been going at this for about an hour and 20 minutes. So, see if we can go through this relatively quick because I don't know if I necessarily want this to go on forever. But now we've talked about what was each of our favorite entries that we wrote. Now I want to know which one was your favorite that someone else wrote. Just because I think that would be fun. So, man, I'm going to have to look at the table of contents here again. You know what? I'm not going to go first. We'll start with Darren because, again, he's been too quiet.
He's been muted.
I'm going to pick one from each of you.
Aw.
Oh, no.
I'll be quick about it. Chris, by the way, Chris, can we have a bonding moment? Because my hair is darker on top than my beard is. And
Yes, son.
Yeah.
I've got 3 different hair colors coming out of the one same area. What the heck is that?
Yeah. All right. Chris, I want to say that I thought your one on Used to Scrubs was just brilliant. And
Thank
I
you.
think everyone can identify with it, but that's not the one that I'm going to choose because I think Moon Knight is a highly underrated character. I love Moon Knight. And I never collected the Moon Knight comic, but he would be in Spider-Man quite a bit. And I like how you put, the different identities that he had. It was like putting on the armor for each thing. And I was starting to see maybe even some other correlations because every one of us has different identities. Like you go to your workplace and then you're in your family. Like you could be the baby in your family, but you can be the supervisor at work. So anyway, Moon Knight, I love that one.
Thank you.
Eric, I really like your devotion on Dr. Morbius and the id and it's just the pride that he had. I've never seen the movie, but you just laid the story out so well. I felt like I was walking along and discovering it as I was reading it. And it's like we all have that pride of thinking, oh, wait a second. Let me handle this. I'm smart enough to handle this. You're not smart enough to handle this. Yeah. And to think, how many times have I done that? And so that one was a really good one. So Becky, I like the Jurassic Park one. I like your correlation with Dr. Grant and how he was, standoffish. And that's the only one of the Jurassic movies that I've seen. And so I was hoping, I hope this is one of the movies that I have seen. And so it was the movie that I have seen. And I thought it was a really good correlation. And then Scott. Oh, what did I have for Scott? I think a lot of people were going to say Thor versus Shazam. That is a really good one. And it's just very intriguing. But I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say the one that you picked, the Mysterio one. Because I'm a big Spider-Man fan. And just the illustration and the quotes from the movie were so relevant. It's so easy to fool people when they're already fooling themselves. Oh, that was so good. And then your challenge at the end, test everything in the light of Scripture. Wow, good challenge. And then for Nick, who's not here, I want to make sure he gets a little love too. I picked the Gorgon's Heart, the Medusa. He's a fascinating character, but he did a twist. He made it more like identifying with the person who has been turned to stone and what it would mean to be transformed back. And then he made a little trip to Narnia with the White Witch and the statues in the courtyard and how those people had to be transformed back to living flesh. So I liked that one. And then Nathan, my favorite for you was something that's actually more mainstream. I was very surprised that you did the one on Bruce Lee because that's more of a mainstream thing and not really a nerd type thing. But I'm a Bruce Lee fan too. But I didn't know that you were aware of Longstreet And I thought maybe you could have set that show up a little bit better, that he was working with a guy who was partially blind and was struggling with self-confidence and had, gotten beat up by some thugs and felt like, man, I'm this half blind guy. And so he was learning from Bruce Lee, but in the movie he played someone else, didn't he? Or in Longstreet?
He wasn't playing him. He wasn't playing himself. No, he was playing a character.
But the idea was be water, conform to whatever situation you're in. When water's poured into a cup, when water's poured into a bowl, it takes that shape. So be water. And you made the correlation of the Apostle Paul became all things to all people. And so that kind of struck my Bruce Lee fanatic in me. So anyway, one from everybody.
Thank you. All right, Scott, how about you?
So I have two that were kind of my favorite, that stood out to me at least. I mean, all of them were really good, but and they've both already been mentioned tonight. One is Becky's Sailor Moon, and the reason that one stood out to me so much is, obviously I've heard of Sailor Moon. I know what she looks like. People cosplay her as her at Comic Cons and stuff, but I never watched any of the anime. I don't really know anything about her story, but Becky did such a good job writing this character. After a page and a half of describing her story, I was already invested. Like, I cared about this character and I wanted to know who she was and where her life was going. Like, I wanted to know the end of her story.
Let me tell you, I decided, because of being friends with Becky and also because of some stuff on the podcast that I won't get into, but let's just say Becky basically created a character for the podcast. But I've actually been partaking of a little bit of Sailor Moon, and I am enjoying it way more than I think I should. I am definitely not the target audience for this thing,
Right.
but it's pushing the superhero buttons for me. I think that's why it's working for me.
Yeah. So she drew me in just, within that first page and a half, introducing the character and walking through her origin. And then, she led into the question of identity and, who am I? And, as she already mentioned, talked about how relevant that is for our culture today, that, we deal and wrestle with this question of identity a lot. And then the other one ties right back into that, which was Darren's one on Darkwing Duck, of all things. Because now I was a Darkwing Duck fan as a kid too, but just listening to the way Darkwing describes himself, and he quotes so many of the "I am this, I am that, I am this, I am that," and of course Darkwings are all funny, but then he connects it to Jesus' "I am" statements. And, all through John, Jesus makes these I am statements telling us who he is. And I just thought that the two of those side by side made for an interesting comparison, because on the one side, we've got us who often wrestle with wondering, who am I? And seeking the answer to that question. And then you've got on the other side, Jesus saying, I am, and telling us in all these different colorful and inventive ways who he is. And there's, kind of like how Becky said, we find our identity in Christ. And so the better we understand who he is, the better we'll understand who we are and who we're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of Becky's entries,
No.
there you go. Did Jurassic Park have a tuxedo mask? Anyway, Eric, your turn.
My turn. So I had to look through the table of contents this time. I cheated. There's a lot of good things in here, but one of the ones that I'm really impressed with, Nick, who cannot join us, did an entry entitled "No Gelfling is an Island," and he takes a look at the Gelflings from the Dark Crystal, but he goes to the prequel series on Netflix, which is a great series. It's very well done, very fun. And he just takes a look at our need their need as Gelflings in all these different tribes that were kind of unorganized. There was a system that organized them, but wasn't themselves organizing themselves. It was a system that was very much controlling them. And they didn't really align and cooperate very well. And he looks at their need to learn to cooperate and compares that with our need as followers of Jesus and all of these different denominations to learn to cooperate together.
Mm-hmm.
And how, you know, I as a Wesleyan am not on my own. I can cooperate with Scott from a small Bible church and with Nate who attends a Reformed church, I believe now.
Yeah.
And we can all cooperate together because we all see different pieces of who Jesus is and bring those pieces together to have a more full idea. And just our need as a people to cooperate instead of to compete with each other.
Yeah, definitely. So. All right, Chris, your turn.
Sorry, I'm muting. Luna is desperate for playing attention.
I'm noticing. But, you know, it's just like, you know, you can't have a redeemed otaku anything without a cat interruption. So, you know, you can't have a One Cross Radio anything, kitty, without a Luna interruption.
Oh, yeah, no, she's the perpetual co-host.
Yes.
Oh, hi, baby. Yes. I'll quickly say, I love that through how the chapters, we got a chapter from Scott about the best Fantastic Four movie, and then the next chapter we got from Scott was about the Fantastic Four. I just loved that. In terms of my favorites, two automatically come to mind. Like, don't get me wrong, everybody, I've loved everything, but Darren, your chapter on Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, I was like, I know some stuff about this character, and it brought a lot of new knowledge to me about it, and I'm like, dang, this is so accurate. It's kind of punching me in the face. And then also, I was like, man, if the filmmakers who tried to do that Monsterverse even put half the functioning, like, understanding that you do with that character, that franchise might be off the ground. And then, of course, Bex's chapter on Sailor Moon. It's just so good. I love hearing Bex find illustrations in Sailor Moon. Like, her and I have done episodes on each other's shows where we've talked about Sailor Moon, and she's always finding this stuff. She's gotten me into the show. So actually sitting down and reading it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just like, just great job all around.
There's a lot of Bex and Sailor Moon love going around. Like, speaking of Bex, which one was your favorite from that wasn't written by you?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's been several that have been mentioned. The Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, the Darkwing Duck. I'm a big fan of Darkwing Duck. I was actually a little jealous that you got Darkwing Duck, and I didn't think of that one first. So, just gonna say. The fun thing about this devotional is there's a lot of stuff that I'm not familiar with, but because of how you guys linked these all to biblical truths and lessons, I'm now interested. I want to read about the Green Lantern and the Blue Lantern, and I want to read about all these other characters now that I've never encountered before. The ones that really stood out to me, definitely Chris's anxiety. Oh wait, here it is. Let's see, which one was it?
Was the one on Jessica Cruz.
Jessica Cruz, thank you, Jessica Cruz. I had it written down here. Jessica Cruz. Great chapter. That was a great devotional, and super interested in that character now. Another one that I enjoyed, again, Nick isn't here, but the one about Atris and the art of mankind. That was a really cool one to read, because I played Myst as it was released on our old Macintosh, and uncovering the story, and then I got super into the books and the novels. So that was a fun read to revisit that franchise, but also make that connection of how we should be creating just as our creator created us. And then to tie that back into, I have like notes all over the place. I'm sorry. But to tie that into creating things for His glory, for God's glory, and not for our own gain, our own glory, but for the glory of God. So there's just so many good ones.
Well,
Yeah.
It's hard to
this
pick
is kind of an
and
interesting
choose.
side note.
Uh-huh.
I was at a conference for Christians involved in game development a few years ago out in Oregon, and the creator of Myst was there. He was one of the keynote speakers.
Man. That would be
And
awesome.
so he's a believer, and his session was amazing. His session on world creation was just amazing. And so that was really cool. What was kind of quirky was that someone had, just a bunch of random stuff out there selling. One was the Christian alternative to Myst. Someone had just one random.
Wow.
Yeah, but
okay.
his session
That's
was
like
amazing.
that almost. Instead of Jesus, you can have Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so
it's like
cool,
you want me to
fun
pick
side
between
fact.
Jesus and Buddy Christ? Is that what?
Basically.
Yeah, he did a great session, and he rewrote a piece of scripture into computer programmer speech that I a long time ago I shared on Facebook. Man, I think it was the scripture on love. I think it was from 1 Corinthians 13.
Yeah, probably that would
portion of
make
that.
sense. Yeah.
Homie might be on to the next Bible translation, man.
Yeah.
Because we have to convert the machines before Skynet rises. Sure.
Yes, Nate.
Convert
to do that.
Skynet to
We have to
Christianity
convert
and
Ultron.
find the apocalypse will
Ultron
be
and Skynet and all of those.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring up two. I'm going to continue the Nick love because Nick's got to get represented here. And I'm going to bring up one that not everyone else has brought up because it's more obscure. And that would be his one on the Stanley Parable, which is this very strange computer game that you can buy on Steam that he had me play. It's almost not a game. It's almost more like a social experiment almost, just to see what you do. It's this very strange game that's more about, you can actually, if you do it right, you can actually beat the game in about 20 minutes if you want to. The whole point is that it's first person, you're this character, and you have a narrator that's narrating everything you do, and then you get to the point where just like, do you want to just keep doing what the narrator says, or you just want to say screw it and go do something else? And so it's all about choices, and if you start going against the narrator more and more, you make him agitated, and there's like 20 endings for this game depending on the kinds of choices that you make. And he related it back to that, because Nick loves getting all philosophical about this, about how people view God that way, that he's just this iron-fisted being that just dictates everything, and you have no free will and all of that sort of stuff. And it was just wonderful hearing him break down such a big philosophical concept down to this very quirky video game. And then the other one I want to bring up, I'm going to give you a little bit of love, Chris. Dinobot.
Yes.
I love the story of Dinobot. I loved your entry on it, talking about his journey as a character and how complex a character he is, and he doesn't really fit in with either the good guys or the bad guys. He's one of the good guys, but he used to be one of the bad guys. He doesn't really fit in with either camp. He's such an incredible character. And it is heart-wrenching to watch the scene to watch the episode where he makes the ultimate sacrifice, and it's this choice that he knew was coming, and he had to make it. And it gets me every time I watch that episode. It gets to me. It really does. I know it sounds silly that a show meant to sell toys can hit you in the feels, as the kids say, but it does.
Well, I was going to say, anybody who's watching this live stream or hears it later, the episode in question is Code of Hero. It's from the second season of Beast Wars. It is, to me, the absolute best story coming out of anything Transformers. Nothing touches it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Now, my laptop is fixing to die, so let's wrap this up very quickly. So, my other questions we basically answered except for one, which is where can you get the book? To put it simply, go on Amazon. You can find it there. Hopefully, we'll have some ebook versions of it available very soon. You can also get it from me or Eric, at least currently. If anybody else wants author copies to take the cons or whatever, call us. Anyway,
If
so
anybody's
if you
running
come find
cons in
Eric or
Canada,
I-
I'm happy to go.
if you find Eric or I at a convention, you can buy copies from us. They will be signed and it will be glorious. So that's basically it. And we've mentioned what all of us do. And, guys, feel free to send me any links or whatever that you want me to include in the show notes for this. And I will be sure so that people know where to find you and to check out all of your stuff, because a lot of you are podcasters, writers, and all of that sort of stuff. All right. Thank you very much. Go buy the book, people.
Yes.
Go buy the book.
It's a great
And buy
read.
books 1 and 2 while you're at it too.
Right.
All right.
Answer Scotsman's question. I think it was Rand Miller that was at the conference I was at.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's my brother. It's my brother
Yep.
again. Yeah.
I think it was Rand. But
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Funko. Anyway, see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.